Hi, Duncan. Steve, we still can't hear you. Are you going to call in? So Steve will speak via his phone, but he's going to have his video on.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August monthly meeting of Lamorinda CERT. I have muted everyone with the exception of Julie and Joyce. So if anyone would like to say something, please hold up your hand and Julie will unmute you. This way we can keep the background noise down and not have any interference. A lot of you are not members, not graduates of CERT. So I want to take the first couple of minutes to let you know what CERT is. CERT is the Community Emergency Response Team. We teach people how to be prepared for disasters. We don't go out to respond to the disaster normally, but rather we teach people how to respond for themselves. And then in a serious disaster, then we all come together and work as a team. But for everyday things, we all work as individuals. CERT is a 9-week class series. We have one starting on September 9th. And it's 1 night a week, 3 hours each night for 9 weeks. So it's a pretty intensive course. We have just reworked the entire curriculum. FEMA came out with a new curriculum in January of 2020, and Contra Costa found that it was not suitable in many cases for what we taught. So we have reworked it. We've brought it up to the standards of CDC and FDA for the medical, and so everything is now up to snuff. And so we'll be starting with a whole new curriculum in September. One thing that we do as CERTs is we volunteer and we give back to the community. One of the things that we're doing in September is working at the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival. So we're currently open for volunteers who want to come help in traffic control at the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival. We'll be sending out an email in the next few days with more information on this. So please think about it and be ready to volunteer. We have with us tonight our registrar, our public information officer, and some instructors. And if I don't see all of the instructors who are here, bear with me. It's not an intentional slight, but we have Julie Sparks is our registrar, and she's an instructor, and she runs things. Jenny, who's nodding her mane of blonde hair right now, is our public information officer, and she's also an instructor. Then we have Diana Wild. Diana, wave your hand. Yeah. Diana is a new instructor. Dean Gottfried, with the lovely shot of the reservoir behind him. Gene is an instructor emeritus. He's a fantastic knowledge base for medical knowledge and radio knowledge. And he's taught for many years, but he's no longer in our active instructor corps. I hope to change that. And let's see, I saw Gordon Nathan somewhere in here. I don't see him currently. Oh, there he is. There he is. Gordon has been an instructor. He was the head of the program, as the program coordinator, they called him at that point. The title is now program manager, and that's what I am. I'm Duncan Seibert. So I don't see any other instructors here tonight. Oh, Charlie. That's Charlie nodding his head. Charlie is a fairly new instructor, but very active, and he is always there when we need him. Charlie is great. So with that, I will turn it over to Julie to start the program for the evening.
Thank you, Duncan. I was just putting some information in chat. I put our website for Lamorinda CERT in case you wanted to register for our upcoming class starting in September, or if you'd like some of the resources that we will even talk about this evening. We have plenty of resources on our website as well. And of course, if you'd like to volunteer with the Art and Wine Festival, I threw my email address in there. You can hit me up and I will make sure we get you on our list. And I'll be putting things in the chat throughout. So if you have a question, go ahead and stick that in the chat. I'll try to monitor that as much as possible. I know the other presenters will also be monitoring the chat. We'll try and get all your questions answered as good as possible. And I do plan on having some questions and answers at the end of our presentation. But I want to make sure everybody gets their questions in. So if you do put it in the chat, we'll be able to give you the answers as best we can. So tonight for our presentation, we have a wonderful group from the Orinda Firewise Council. It's the group on education outreach. And I've seen some of their presentations and presentation materials. It's amazing. They have such a wonderful collection of, it's almost like everything you need to know on how to help out with fuel mitigation and to make your home, harden your home in the event of a wildfire. So this is a great presentation tonight, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you'll get things out of it. I sure did when I watched it the first time. So I'm sure I'll get some more out of it this time as well. So to start us off, I'd like to introduce Joyce Arnon. She is a Lamorinda CERT graduate, as well as a member of the Orinda Firewise Council. So go ahead, Joyce, I'll take it from here.
Thank you, Julie. We'd like to welcome all of you to our presentation, Getting Started with Firewise. We're very happy that so many neighborhoods in Lamorinda are now interested in becoming Firewise recognized sites. My name is Joyce Arnon, and I am part of the Firewise Council Education and Outreach Committee. And I would like to introduce members of our committee who will be speaking tonight. And Joan Lucas, if you want to raise your hand, hi. And Sue Wecht and Melanie Light. Great. And in addition, Melanie Light is the founder and chair of the Orinda Firewise Council, which was formed in February 2020. The four of us are Firewise leaders who have taken our neighborhoods through the process of becoming Firewise recognized sites. We are all block captains and Firewise board members in our own neighborhoods. And we are also members of the Orinda Firewise Council. Joan and I have both taken the Lamorinda CERT training. The Orinda Firewise Council was formed in February 2020. And it received the Mayor's Award of Excellence for 2020. Melanie would like to say a few introductory remarks now. And I think you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Getting Started with Firewise session. And before we start, I just want to give a couple of shout outs. First of all, to all the good CERT people who invited us here, and Duncan and Julie for organizing this and the terrific outreach into the community. It really is nice to work with you on this together. And also, I also want to give thanks to Joyce, Joan, and Sue for their generous offering of time in putting together this program. They have been really conscientious in their research, and their information is rock solid. And I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So thank you, everyone. And thanks to all of you in the audience there for stepping forward tonight to make your home, your neighborhood, and our town more wildfire resilient. So I want to give you a little history. About 3 years ago, Chief Winiger of the Moraga Orinda Fire District, or MOFD, began making presentations to neighborhoods to inform us about wildfire risk. My neighbors and I went to one, and we were completely horrified to hear that because of climate change and the incredible backlog of fuel that's been accumulating for, I don't know, 50 or 70 years, our town could be destroyed in about 4 hours. Needless to say, I did not get a lot of sleep that night, but the chief did offer an action plan. So the problem is excess fuel, and the answer is pretty simple. We just need to get rid of it. And to do that, there's a community-based program through the National Fire Protection Association, Firewise USA, and that's why you're here tonight. What is so striking to me about the nature of a wildfire is that it is inherently an interdependent proposition. So if I prepare for an earthquake, it doesn't matter so much to me if you don't shear wall or bolt your foundation. But if I don't remove my excess fuel or harden my home, I'm actually putting you in danger. And if you don't do your work, you're putting me in danger. That's how wildfires spread. So this is very important work for us to be doing as a community. And it can be this mindset about being interdependent, it can be new to many of us who are used to solving our own problems. While our community is incredibly generous about giving to others in need, it's a bit new for us to admit that we need each other to solve this problem and create a defensible space. The threat of wildfire calls us back to the notion that a community really thrives when it works together, like in the olden days when people would raise barns together or bring in the harvest. And now we need to do this in order to make ourselves safe. In addition to creating a Firewise group, we would love to have you join our network of Firewise groups here in Orinda and even Lamorinda. I think we would extend our network informally beyond our borders, because our voice is so much stronger in greater numbers. And network members, we get critical information out to each other really quickly. We support each other, and we're the first ones that MOFD calls on to partner to share grant monies. Today, we're talking about Firewise in Orinda, but each Firewise community will be unique because each community approaches reducing fuel a little bit differently. For example, Moraga and Orinda are served by MOFD, which set up a chipper program and other fire prevention activities for those two towns. But then Orinda also passed Measure R to speed up the work, and they now have their own targeted campaign in addition to that. And part of that, for example, is that we have our own chipper program. But in any case, what we really would like is for you to get the tools that you need to get started in your own neighborhood. So welcome to Firewise. Joyce, back to you.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm going to share my screen now for our presentation. Why did we all decide to do Firewise in our own neighborhoods? We all feel very strongly about the importance of getting all of the neighborhoods in Orinda and Lamorinda Firewise recognized because of the location and the conditions in which we live. We are all familiar with the catastrophic Oakland Hills fire in 1991, the Napa and Sonoma fires in October 2017, and the Camp Fire in Paradise in November 2018. In 2020, there were massive wildfires circling the Bay Area and all over Northern California and the West Coast, which started in mid-August due to lightning storms and which burned for months. And of course, currently there are 13 large fires burning in Northern California due to our extreme drought, dead and desiccated fuel, and early heat waves. The Dixie Fire in Butte, Plumas, and Lassen counties is now the second largest fire in California history. Lamorinda is very similar to Napa, Sonoma, and the Oakland Hills. We have similar climates, geography, topography, and fuel load. We are surrounded by open space, watershed land, and regional parks. The hot, dry Diablo winds, which typically arrive in September and October and blow from the northeast, put us in Lamorinda particularly at risk. Lamorinda is considered a wildland urban interface, or WUI. This is the agenda for today's presentation. And please note when you see the little red hyperlink symbol on any of the slides, we'll be able to find links to those things in the emergency resources document, which was in the CERT newsletter. We'll often be mentioning Firewise in Orinda and MOFD in our presentation, but most everything about the process of becoming Firewise recognized applies to Moraga and Lafayette as well. So next, I just wanted to show you some examples of recent fires in the Lamorinda area. Back in May of 2013, there was a fire in Orinda Oaks Park. And this was the spring, but there were hot, dry winds that day. And the fire started at 1:30 in the afternoon on Ivy Drive and burned up into the park. It was extinguished at 3 p.m. 40 houses were threatened, but none of them burned. In the end, 10 acres did burn in the Orinda Oaks Park. Then in October of 2019, there was a fire called the Merrill Fire near Sanders Ranch in Moraga. And this happened at 1 a.m. in the morning, just an hour after the PSPS, Public Service Power Shutoff, started. And so there was no electricity in that area and very poor, or if any, cell phone service. So firefighters had to go knocking on all the doors to have the homeowners evacuate. 150 firefighters responded to that fire. 140 homes were evacuated and none burned. Later, it was found that it was started accidentally, possibly by an electronic smoking device. In October 2019, there was a fire in Lafayette, and that was also during a public service power shutoff in the afternoon, 2:45. However, that part of Lafayette didn't have the power shut off, and indeed the fire was sparked by a power line. In that fire, 5 acres burned, but on both sides of Highway 24, and 2 houses and a swim and tennis club burned in that fire. Then last summer, there was a fire that was sparked by the lightning that happened in August 2020. High winds and a crashing tree sparked the fire on Manzanita Road in Orinda at 3 in the morning. And then that same August, a little bit later, there was a fire on Estates Drive in Orinda, which happened at 3 a.m. in the morning. It started in a pool house, which burned down, but a main house was saved. Then there are the pole fires at the same location on Camino Pablo and El Toinal. This one happened in June 2020, a vegetation fire sparked by a PG&E line. And then in the exact same location, this spring, May 2021, a blown transformer again sparked a vegetation fire at the same location. Now I would like to introduce Joan, who will be speaking about the process of becoming Firewise.
Actually, we're going to start with Sue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I'm going to kick off the Firewise step process. This is a sign, the official Firewise USA sign with the Firewise symbol you will see on their website, on their brochures, and on road signs. This sign is given to all recognized Firewise communities to proudly post. In the beginning of our presentation, you saw some of the signs from our neighborhoods. I will tell you it will be a proud moment when you complete the 6-step Firewise program and receive this sign from the National Fire Protection Association. Next slide, please. What is Firewise? by definition of the National Fire Protection Association, it's a voluntary program that provides a framework to help neighbors get organized, find direction, and take action to increase the ignition resistance of their homes and community. Firewise tries to change the risk of wildfire destruction through these actions. The NFPA is a nonprofit agency. It's science-based and encourages neighbors to work together as a community. And any community that meets a set of voluntary criteria on an annual basis and retains an in good standing status may identify itself as being a Firewise site. It takes anywhere from 1 month to a year to become a Firewise recognized site. And what are the benefits to becoming a Firewise recognized site? There are some people who think there's nothing that they can do about wildfire prevention. However, Firewise gives you the knowledge to educate your community on wildfire prevention, which benefits your neighbors and you by giving you protection and safety for your family, by increasing the potential for your home and your neighborhood to withstand a wildfire. As stated by the NFPA, we have the ability to slow down a fire, minimize our losses, and also make it easier or make it safer, I should say, for our firefighters. Next slide, please. This is a slide that shows the locations of Firewise communities in Moraga and Orinda. Each site has a number locator designated by Moraga Orinda Fire Department. Currently, we have 25 communities and growing, 20 in Orinda and 5 in Moraga. Our goal is to fill in the spaces with Firewise communities. Nationwide, in 42 states, there are Firewise communities in 42 states nationwide and more than 1,700 participation sites, with an increase in areas affected by wildfire. Next slide, please. Here we have an overview of the 6-step process. This information is on the NFPA website at firewise.org. You'll be working with them and your fire department. First, organize it by forming a Firewise board or committee. Second, plan it by obtaining a wildfire risk assessment from your fire department. Third, create an action plan with your fire department's assistance. Fourth, do it by conducting educational outreach in your neighborhood, such as having a watch party to view webinars. There are lots of ideas. Be creative. Fifth, invest a minimum of $27 per home in wildfire risk reduction. And sixth, submit your completed application. So let's look at the details now of getting started. Next slide, please. Start out by doing the preliminary work. Talk to your neighbors who live in close proximity to you about Firewise. Ask them to participate in the program and learn more about it at firewise.org. Remind them of the fires we had last fall in Orinda, Lafayette, and Moraga, and tell them the structured Firewise process will help your neighborhood. Think of this as a 3-year program, and not everything needs to be done in the first year. Start with a few neighbors and expand by adding more and more to your group. Your goal is to form a Firewise neighborhood. The Firewise application requires a minimum of 8 homes when you submit your application, but you can start the Firewise recognition process with only 2 or 3 homes. Remember, the more participants, the better, because the larger defensible space in your neighborhood, the more likely you are to stop or slow the fire. Your group will decide how they want to handle communications and deal with privacy issues. The easier it is to message your neighborhood, the more effective your group will be. Ask for their email addresses, phone numbers, and their street addresses for each person you talk to, even those who do not seem to be interested. You will need this information for future communication and in the case of an evacuation. Ask them to watch the presentation hosted by CERT from October 2020 on YouTube called Fire Prevention, Fuel Management, and Firewise Communities. They will hear the MOFD wildfire plan for our area by fire chiefs and the fire marshal panel. Then schedule a Zoom session for a follow-up discussion. This will help you fulfill your Firewise education requirement. Ask for volunteers to be block captains and to serve as committee board members. They will be instrumental in preparing your action plan. Lastly, choose a group leader who will take on completing the 6-step process. This should be someone who will keep you on track and most likely will be the person to fill out and submit your application. Only your group leader will submit their contact information to Firewise. Next slide, please. Now you're ready to get started. First, create your Firewise community profile on Firewise USA Program Management portal at portal.firewise.org. This is where you want to register your site information and record your expense and time investments during the year. Your wildfire assessment from your fire department will be uploaded here as well as your action plan. Now I'm going to turn it over to Joan, who's going to talk more about the 6-step process. Joan?
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Sue. One of the very first steps your Firewise Committee Board will take is obtaining a written wildfire risk assessment of your neighborhood boundary from your fire department, a Firewise requirement, updated every 5 years. This risk assessment will identify areas of successful wildfire risk reduction and areas where improvements could be made with an emphasis on the general conditions of home and related home ignition areas. This assessment will be used to prepare your Firewise Board action plan as well, using the Firewise Wildfire Community Risk Assessment template on the NFPA site. A photo of this assessment is on the right-hand side of this slide. To obtain the written wildfire risk assessment, contact your local fire department and request a walkthrough of your neighborhood. In Orinda and Moraga, contact Fire Marshal Jeff Isaacs at jisaacs@mofd.org. This will be educational, so invite your neighbors to join in. It's a great opportunity for them to meet the fire department staff and learn more about the fire prevention steps they need to take in their neighborhoods. Here's a photo of Chief Winokur doing a walkthrough. After your initial assessment, we highly recommend your Firewise Board schedule additional walkthroughs, especially if you have a large neighborhood. It's beneficial to have as many homeowners as possible on a walkthrough. Next slide, please. Next, ask your fire department for their multi-year action plan for your community, which is based on your wildfire risk assessment priorities. The action plan would be included in the wildfire risk assessment they send you afterwards. Your board's action plan will have a prioritized list of risk reduction projects and investments and educational activities to achieve your goals in the first 3 years. An example is the first year focus on education, the second year harden your home. Start small and each year chip away at your plans. On the firewise.org website is a new community wildfire risk tutorial with an overview of the risk assessment process, which will help you draft a multi-year plan to reduce risk from wildfire in your site. This would be very helpful for you and your committee and board to review. Next slide, please. If you live in Orinda or Moraga, part of your action plan may be to schedule the MOFD wood chipper for your neighborhood. This is a very popular program offered to Orinda and Moraga residents at no cost. Neighbors just cut their yard trimmings and set them in their driveways, near the street, or by the curb of their home. The chipping crew will come on a scheduled day and pick up the trimmings. This is a photo of the chipper. MOFD has a chipper and crew that operate in the spring, and the city of Orinda just purchased their own chipper using Measure R funds that will operate year-round. This is fantastic news. MOFD is scheduling both, so send an email to them on the email listed on this slide. Next slide, please. Speaking of action plans, here's the recent MOFD postcard sent to our community, reminding us the fire season is here asking, will your home withstand a wildfire? And MOFD needs your help to reduce wildfire risk. Using this postcard is an opportunity for your committee to reach out to your neighborhood, making sure they've received it and discuss the recommended steps needed to make us all fire safe. If you don't receive this postcard, you can still access this information on the MOFD website. This is an MOFD priority and therefore it is ours. The compliance deadline was June 1st. Of significance, on the front of the card are 4 important steps to reduce wildfires, which are all in our fire code. Number 1, clearance of brush and vegetation growth from the street from a 3-foot wide by 15-foot height to provide clearance for fire trucks. Number 2, preventing ladder fuels by creating separation of shrubs and trees, as we call it limbing of trees. Number 3, cleaning gutters and roofs of leaves and debris to reduce the risk of fire from ember cast. Number 4, maintain all ground areas within 2 feet of your home or structures free of combustible ground cover, including mulch or bark, and maintain a minimum 1-foot clearance above ground for any plantings. This is a new landscaping fire code, which Sue will cover in her presentation in more depth on hardening your home. On the other side of the postcard, there are 2 examples, one of a poorly maintained landscape versus a well-maintained landscape in the defensible spaces around our homes, known as home ignition zones. It illustrates that eliminating the amount of combustible vegetation in these zones will reduce your fire risk. This will also be covered in more detail in Sue's presentation. The QR code on the postcard will take you to the MOFD website for more helpful information with how-to videos and links, including fire-safe landscaping tips. Next slide, please. What activities count towards the $27 investment that you need to make for each home? Here are some examples from an NFPA webinar. Don't feel intimidated. The requirements are pretty easy to meet and you'll easily do far more. Volunteer hours doing risk reduction work could be things like work on the home improvements and cleanups, landscaping within 100 feet of the home, and work in common areas. Money spent doing risk reduction work examples are things like renting a chipper or using the chipper from Orinda or other equipment and rental purchase. Contractor costs such as landscape, trees, and debris removal. Home improvement costs, new Class A roofs and non-combustible decks. Our neighborhood had a big potluck and invited Dennis Rain to talk about fire prevention and evacuation. It was fun, got people really motivated to do their work, and it counted towards our certification. Next slide, please. Lastly, you must keep track of money spent or volunteer hours, which is a Firewise requirement. There are helpful forms at the website nfpa.org as shown on this slide. The time and expense investment examples and volunteer hour worksheets have examples of potential actions and activities that can be used to meet the total investments. We use these forms because it's easier to track this information for your application on the portal. Each site has to invest the equivalent of 1 volunteer hour, which is valued at $27.40 per dwelling in annual wildfire risk reduction. This is a Firewise requirement. For example, if you have 20 homes, that means you need to make a $548 investment for your Firewise site. This is an honor system, so no receipts are needed. You don't need separate entries for each of your neighbors on the application, just as long as the total amount entered meets or exceeds the Firewise requirement. Keep in mind, it's more of a community incentive, not the dollars that matter. The dollars just show the efforts. That's a quote from Megan McGowan Fitzgerald from NFPA. We went through the process of starting a Firewise community and hope this information was helpful to you. Now I'll give you some information on how to encourage participation. Next slide, please. Some of your neighbors may already know something about Firewise. Perhaps they've seen one of the Firewise Neighborhood signs that are posted around town or read one of the many articles in our local newspapers. Even if they don't know the Firewise program specifically, they may know about the extreme fire danger we face in Orinda and be open to learning more. I'm going to give you a few ideas about how to get your neighbors interested. First, when you invite your neighbors to the first meeting, they may be more responsive to someone they know. For example, there are 46 homes in my Firewise group, and I asked the 4 Black block captains to send the initial email to their subgroup. Be concise. Some people won't read long emails, so if you want to make it as easy as possible for them. For example, I copied my chipper flyer into the body of the email rather than sending as an attachment. Remind your neighbors before the meeting via email or a phone call. I called a neighbor who hadn't responded to my email and found out she wasn't planning to attend because she would be late. I explained the importance of what I was going to cover in the meeting and invited her to come as soon as she could. It was a good thing she attended because it turned out she was completely unaware of the fire danger in our neighborhood and her family was not registered to receive evacuation alerts. After the meeting, in addition to registering to receive the alerts, she ultimately limbed up over 175 trees on her property and cleared old juniper along our road, making our immediate neighborhood much safer. Which brings me to the next topic. In addition to Firewise, educating our neighbors about evacuation, red flag days, earthquake preparation, and registering for alerts is very important. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've already talked about it, but we can't stress enough the benefits of the chipper. The Sleepy Hollow neighborhood had a no juniper left behind program that resulted in the neighborhood pulling together to remove juniper, especially along the roadsides. Juniper can send flames 10 to 15 feet in the air, so their neighborhood is definitely safer now. This summer, we had the chipper in our neighborhood for the third time, and yet they collected more than 4 tons of material, more than they could finish in a day, so they returned the next day to finish up. If you have a large neighborhood, you might be able to negotiate a lower rate with the tree service. The Campo neighborhood in Moraga has 400 homes, and Firewise leader Steve Hoyt was able to negotiate a discount for a short time period with a particular contractor. Steve is here tonight if you have any questions. Next slide, please. The chipper is a great motivator and gets neighbors working together. On the right is a flyer we use in our neighborhood to advertise our chipper. We printed it on a large poster, borrowed a realtor open house stand, and put it at the main intersection of our neighborhood. You can also send it in an email or place a flyer in mailboxes. On the left is a sign that's currently in Sleepy Hollow advertising their second use of the chipper, so it doesn't have as much detail as we had in the first one that we posted in our neighborhood, but they had the great idea of including a QR code that takes you directly to the Sleepy Hollow Neighborhood Association website with information on how to sign up for the chipper for that neighborhood. Next slide, please. Several years ago, Fire Chief Winokur divided Orinda into evacuation zones so that neighborhoods closest to wherever there was a fire could be evacuated first. MOFD has begun using a new technology called Zone Haven to manage evacuations. It's being used throughout Contra Costa as well as many counties in the Bay Area. There are 2 applications, one for the public and one for professionals who will be involved in responding to a wildfire. The Zone Haven Community Aware app provides you with your evacuation zone, as you can see it on this slide, and the zone status or critical evacuation updates, recommended evacuation routes, and when it is safe to return to your home. Be sure to go to the app and make note of your zone. I added my zone as a contact in my phone, so I'll have it handy in case of an evacuation. If you get an evacuation alert, be prepared to leave within minutes. Otherwise, you'll get caught in the traffic from the next zone that's being evacuated. For example, in our neighborhood, there are 1,500 homes that funnel into Minor Road leading out to the freeway. So it's very important that we are prepared to leave immediately. I read about a couple who was evacuated during the Paradise Fire, and the wife wanted to go upstairs and get her jewelry, but her husband said no. She now says they would have died if she had taken those extra few minutes. Our fire chief says the same thing, that we need to be prepared to leave immediately if we're evacuated. I keep that in mind when putting together my evacuation plans, and I hope you will too. We bought a small fireproof safe that contains our valuables, and we put it in our trunk along with our go bag during red flag warnings. Next slide, please. Because there are oil refineries in Contra Costa County, we have a robust warning system called Contra Costa County Warning System, or CWS. This is the system that is used by Zone Haven to contact residents on their phones in case of an evacuation. We're fortunate to have this system, but it originally relied on landlines, so it's extremely important to register cell phones. You can register as many phones as you want. I have both my landline and multiple cell phones registered, and I got a call on our most recent trial evacuation a couple weeks ago, and all my phones rang. This is the system that MOFD and Zonehaven will use to issue evacuation alerts. We recommend that you add CWS as a contact in your phone and then add it in your emergency contacts and favorites so that you'll receive the alert even if your phone is on do not disturb mode. You can also download the Pulse Point app on your phone and register to receive alerts from MOFD.
Hey.
Uh-oh. Is Steve Danziger saying something? Lafayette has a new radio station housed in the police department that will broadcast alert messages. It covers all of Lafayette.
Good. Yeah. Slow day? Not slow, but nothing.
Sorry about that. I thought he was maybe saying something about MOFD. So Lafayette has a new radio station that covers all of Lafayette, portions of Moraga, Orinda, Pleasant Hill, and Walnut Creek. Even if you don't get the signal at your house, you might be able to hear it in your car, which could be helpful in an evacuation situation. Last year, we learned about evacuating during power outages, so we recommend getting a solar-powered weather hazard radio, which will allow you to get alerts even if your cell phone battery is dead. I'll talk more about a go bag on the next slide. Even the best plans have limitations, but Firewise communities are positioned to fill the gaps by knowing and being able to communicate directly with their neighbors. Lastly, do not wait to be evacuated. Be aware of your surroundings, and if you smell smoke or sense anything that's not right, evacuate immediately. You can always return home if it turns out to be a false alarm. Have a go bag for each member of your household near your vehicle with at least the items on this chart. Goggles are recommended to protect your eyes from smoke and embers. Work gloves would allow you to remove tree branches or other impediments that might be on the road on your evacuation route. Store important documents in the cloud or have a memory stick in your go bag. Don't forget supplies for pets. Keep electronics such as cell phone, tablet, laptop with chargers plugged in but all together and ready to grab and go during red flag days. Make sure you have a full tank of gas during red flag warnings and either park your car in your driveway, possibly even facing out, or make sure you can open your garage door without power. We have all been asked to evacuate in one car per family only to keep the number of cars on the evacuation routes to a minimum. We highly recommend you participate in any future evacuation exercises put on by the fire and police. There was a virtual evacuation exercise a little over a year ago, and in preparation for that, I found that I am not quite tall enough to reach the pull cord that I would need to use to open my garage if we were evacuated without power. I now have a step stool stored permanently right next to my car. This is not something I would have thought of if I hadn't participated in the exercise. We had another virtual evacuation exercise about a week ago, and I hoped you participated. Our Firewise leaders reminded our neighbors about this drill. Sue will talk more about what to do during red flag alerts later in the presentation. Next slide, please. With all the recent red flag days and power outages, we sometimes forget that we also live in an earthquake area. We felt a small earthquake in the middle of the night a few months ago. You've got to love living in the Bay Area. But you need to plan on 2 gallons of water per day per person. CERT orders water storage drums of various sizes and offers them to the public at cost a few times a year. Find out the latest on their website. In addition to food, I guess we now also need to make sure we have lots of toilet paper on hand. It's highly recommended that you install an automatic gas shutoff valve in case you aren't home during an earthquake that disrupts gas lines. This would need to be installed by an electrician. You can also download the MyShake app on your phone and register to receive earthquake alerts both in our local area or even around the world if you want. Next slide, please. The Guide to Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation lists the go bag contents I covered, as well as other valuable information. It was a labor of love prepared by Duncan Siebert, who is our host here tonight. And in case you missed it, there is a PDF version of it available on the CERT website. The Firewise and Emergency Resources sheet you were sent in the email for this class contains hyperlinks to CERT, emergency alerts, MOFD, Firewise, handy supplies, and more. I sent this sheet to my neighbors prior to our first Firewise emergency preparation meeting, so feel free to pass it on to others. I'm now going to pass it over to Sue Weck, who will talk about what to do on red flag days and steps you can take now to harden your home and create defensible space. Sue?
Thank you, Joan. These are signs that you will see in Lamorinda and the greater East Bay community. The red indicates extreme fire danger, and the arrow often points in the red during fall months, red flag warning days, and days when we experience public safety power shutoffs. The West Coast fire season that used to run from June until October now begins in May and stretches into January. Some officials are even saying the California fire season has become year-round. Next slide, please. What is a red flag warning? A red flag warning is a message from the National Weather Service to everyone, local fire agencies and police departments, land management agencies, businesses, and residents to be on alert. There is an increased possibility of a quickly spreading vegetation fire in the area in the next 24 hours. It is typically issued for the San Francisco Bay Area 24 hours in advance. Not every hot summer or hot fall day will have a red flag warning. Two factors that prompt the National Weather Service to issue a red flag warning are low humidity and, most important, wind speed. Often a public safety power shutoff, or PSPS, will be declared in conjunction with a red flag day. A wind-damaged line can spark and start a wildfire. Consequently, for the past 2 years, PG&E has been using PSPS to avoid the potential of a wildfire starting during red flag days. There are a number of ways you can find out if there is a red flag warning in effect. The most common way is the media, television, and radio. May 7th to May 11th, a red flag warning was issued for a large area in the East and North Bays extending to the Central Valley. The Orinda Police Department sent text messages via Nixle and posted the warning on Nextdoor. The warning advised, use caution, extinguish all unnecessary ignition sources, delay work in tall grass or fuel beds. The easiest way for residents to find out if there is a red flag warning in effect is to go to the MOFD website and click on fire danger at the top of the page. This map will come up and you will see the location of the 11 fire danger signs throughout the MOFD fire district and their current danger status. If you see red flags on the map, you will know the National Weather Service has issued a warning of extreme fire danger for our area. You can also go to the National Weather Service website for more information. In addition, check your email and text messages for a warning from your local police department. Next slide, please. The map you see is from the City of Orinda's website. Orinda has instituted red flag parking restrictions on El Toinel and Loma Vista Drive at the request of residents living in those neighborhoods. There will be no off-street parking allowed on these streets during red flag days in order to avoid a potential blockage of the street that could pose an unacceptable hazard for the entire community. For more information, you can email the City of Orinda Public Works Department at cityoforinda.org. These restrictions were also suggested last year by members of the Orinda Firewise Council. In addition, Firewise leaders encourage their neighbors who live on narrow streets to park their cars in their driveway, facing the street and with a full tank of gas during red flag days. This extra road clearance will allow emergency vehicles access and a safe evacuation. Next slide, please. This slide is from the Diablo Fire Safe Council and lists some brief do's and don'ts on a red flag warning day. The important points are: be alert and report any small fires to your local fire department and by calling 911. Be ready to evacuate and have your go bag in your car or near the door you plan to exit from. Firewise advises on planning for at least 2 escape routes. Talk to your family and have a plan on a meeting place should you need to evacuate. This is also the time to bring inside patio chair cushions and patio umbrellas, which are close to your home. Bring in outdoor straw mats that you may have at the entrances to your home. The idea is to remove any combustibles near your home in order to prevent windblown embers that can travel a mile or more in advance of a wildfire from starting another fire if they land on something that will burn. The don'ts have to do with common sense. Don't throw a cigarette butt or other smoking materials out your car window or allow your children to shoot off fireworks. As mentioned before, the Orinda Police Department ordered delaying work in tall grass or fuel beds. Weed whackers operated in tall grass have been known to strike a rock, cause a spark, and start a grass fire. Next slide, please. On May 18th, 2021, the Moraga Orinda Fire Department issued a district-wide burn ban for campfires on public and private land, bonfires, portable outdoor fireplaces, ceremonial fires, and recreational fires. Gas outdoor flame devices such as barbecues or gas fire pits that comply with the fire code are permitted. Use of charcoal grills is also allowed. However, be sure to use these items with caution. The burn ban will remain in effect until the onset of seasonal rains. Next slide, please. Firewise USA uses this graphic to show the 3 home ignition zones. The immediate zone is 0 to 5 feet from the home, including a deck and any attachments. Next is the intermediate 5 to 30 feet zone, and then the extended 30 to 100. You can go to the Firewise website for more details on the home ignition zones. We know there are 3 factors that contribute to a wildfire: topography, weather, and fuel load. We can't do anything about the topography or the weather, but we can do something about fuel load, especially the fuels on our property and around our home. We can lessen the fuel load by practicing fuel mitigation. If there is less to burn, especially in the immediate zone, 0 to 5 feet around our homes, we can slow the progression of a wildfire. This will give us a chance to have a safe evacuation and give firefighters a chance to stop the fire. Your home may become your default shelter if evacuation routes are blocked. In this case, you would be prudent to follow fire prevention guidelines to protect your family and your property. You can start now to reduce the risk of loss of your home to a catastrophic wildfire by creating a defensible space around it. By creating this space, you are giving firefighters a chance to defend and possibly save your home. The very important immediate zone is the zone you want to start working in. Here, you want to trim tree branches at least 6 feet up from the ground and at least 6 feet from your roof, deck, and porch. You also want to remove plants containing resins, oils, and waxes and replace with non-combustible mulch products like crushed stone and gravel. An example of a highly combustible plant frequently used in our area is juniper. You would be wise to remove it, especially if it's in the immediate zone. A few months ago, I was on a Firewise Neighborhood assessment walk with Fire Marshal Isaacs. He pointed out some juniper on a neighbor's property that was growing next to the road. He advised removing it, saying it was highly flammable, and he had seen it shoot flames 10 to 15 feet in the air during a fire. By the end of 2023, the Moraga Orinda Fire Department code will enforce removal of all juniper and bamboo in the fire district that grows within 10 feet of a road or evacuation route. In the immediate zone, MOFD fire code requires plants within 2 feet of the house need to be limbed up to create a 1-foot air gap between the ground and the plant. In the intermediate zone, MOFD fire code requires homeowners to remove Monterey pine and eucalyptus trees within 6 feet of a structure. Mature Monterey pine trees are commonly seen growing throughout Lamorinda. If you have a Monterey pine tree on your property, check to see if it has orange colored needles. This is a sign the tree or branch is dying and highly flammable. You will want to consult with a tree service to have the branch or tree removed. For more information on your local fire code, please go to the Moraga Orinda Fire Department website, or if you live in Lafayette, visit Contra Costa Fire Protection District website. We realize Lafayette residents have a different fire code, but what we as Firewise leaders are suggesting is best practices. A wildfire starting in Lafayette could quickly spread to Orinda or Moraga. And likewise, a fire starting at Orinda or Moraga could spread to Lafayette, regardless of the differences of the code. Next slide, please. An easy step toward creating a defensible space around your home is to cut back vegetation and place yard clippings that won't fit in your green can in large paper recyclable bags. Republic Services will pick up 8 to 14 of these bags 4 times a year at no cost to you. All you have to do is call them and make an appointment. Next slide, please. Republic Services will also switch out your medium-sized green yard waste can for a large 96 can at no extra charge to you. You would be surprised at how much more you can fit in the larger can. Joan and Melanie have talked about the chipper program. If you're interested, complete the online chipper request form at the MOFD website. Next slide, please. Wind-blown embers from a wildfire have been known to land on mulch, causing it to smolder and eventually set a home on fire. MOFD Fire Code directs homeowners to rake back all flammable mulch at least 2 feet away from your home. The video you are about to see is from Firewise USA and is of Santa Rosa residents who experienced a wildfire in their neighborhood. Be sure to notice the burn line where the fire stopped when it reached the stone mulch. Please play the video. I'm not hearing the sound. Can anyone else hear the sound?
No, I think Joyce needs to unmute her screen, I think.
Joyce, could you unmute yourself so we could hear the sound?
I'll start it over again, sorry.
Thank you.
It's pretty emotional. It's so clear when you look at it that the wood mulch burned and it stopped at the gravel. And if it hadn't been for the gravel, it would have burned right up to the edge of the house and burned the house. I don't know, but wouldn't have been good. You know, I think you just can't pretend this area is the way it was 30 years ago when it was early in its life. We're having wildfires now, and I think we have to change the way we think about landscape.
You see the world differently once you've experienced wildfire and having to run from it. You see what's flammable. As a designer and contractor, I used to think about whether it was aesthetically pleasing and highly functional. But highly functional is taken on a much higher level now. Is it functional for a wildfire?
The thing that has struck me over this last couple of weeks was some sense of peace that at least we tried, at least we did something, and as it turns out, what we did mattered.
Thank you. Firewise leaders have been asked, why should I harden my home if I've created a defensible space? The reason is, and I quote from CAL FIRE's Wildfire Preparing Your Home booklet, flying embers from a wildfire can destroy homes up to a mile away and are responsible for the destruction of most homes during a wildfire. Firewise USA defines embers as burning pieces of airborne wood and or vegetation that can be carried more than a mile through the wind. They can cause spot fires, ignite homes, debris, and other objects. Embers can penetrate and smolder in wood piles, patio deck items, vents with 1/4 inch screen, roofs, and debris-filled gutters. According to CAL FIRE, the most vulnerable part of your home in a destructive wildfire is the roof. And homes with wood or wood shingle roofs are the most vulnerable to being destroyed during a wildfire. If embers were to land on them, they could easily set the roof on fire. CAL FIRE advises homeowners to re-roof with materials such as composition, metal, clay, or tile, and to block any spaces between roof decking and roof covering to prevent embers from catching your roof on fire. One of my neighbors recently replaced his wood shake roof with composition roofing material. As a Firewise leader, I called to thank him for making our neighborhood safer. He said, "Our roof wasn't in bad shape, but when we considered the threat to our neighborhood, we knew we had to bite the bullet and replace it." This is but one example of the positive effect Firewise can have on a neighborhood. Next slide, please. A picture is worth 1,000 words. If your roof is designed with valleys, be sure these are cleared of combustible materials like plant debris, such as pine and redwood needles, leaves, and small twigs. The same is true for your gutters. Be sure they are free of flammable plant debris. If you have a deck, it is the second most vulnerable part of your home after your roof and gutters, according to CAL FIRE. Make sure to clean up plant debris that accumulates between the boards, especially the boards closest to your home. Also, do not store flammable items under your deck, and be sure to clean up any wind-blown debris that accumulates there. Next slide, please. In these photos, you can see the homeowner installed ember-resistant Vulcan vents in the eaves and near the foundation crawl space. She also used a stone mulch close to the foundation of her home. She purchased her Vulcan vents from Truett and White Lumber in Berkeley and had her house painter paint and install the vents. You can go to the vulcanvents.com website for more information. Fire Marshal Larry Pissarro said at the 2021 Fire Safe Marin webinar, if there is only one thing a homeowner does to harden their home, he advised they purchase and install ember-resistant vents along the eaves and foundation of their homes. Fire Marshal Jeff Isaacs told me he is in 100% agreement. And last December, Fire Chief Winokur told me to encourage my Firewise neighbors to install ember-resistant vents in their homes. According to the Montecito Fire Protection District, recent post-fire assessments have concluded hardened structures have over 3 times the likelihood of surviving a fire as compared to non-hardened structures. Firewise USA advises homeowners to replace their foundation crawl space 1/4 inch screen vents and the vents in the eaves of their home with 1/8 of an inch screen vents to prevent airborne embers from entering the home and starting a fire within the home. Next slide, please. This slide shows a variety of BrandGuard ember-resistant vents. BrandGuard will send an installer at no additional cost to measure and determine which of their vents would work best on your home. Their installer will also paint and install the vents. If interested, contact the company at brandguard.com. There are other vent manufacturers. Check the CAL FIRE website for a list of approved vent manufacturers. Orders for some manufacturers can be placed through Lowe's and Home Depot websites. Depending on the design of your home and your skills, you may be able to install the vents yourself or with the help of a friend. However, installation of e-vents may require you to climb a ladder, in which case you may want to hire someone to do the work. Next slide, please. While we are on the topic of homes, let's talk about homeowners insurance. If you have insurance questions, concerns, or issues, contact California State Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Laro's office or the nonprofit organization United Policyholders. Both websites are on our resources list. Both are well aware of the problems of affordability and availability of insurance in our area. The California State Department of Insurance is the largest consumer insurance agency in the state. According to a May 2021 California Department of Insurance press release, there are currently 8 insurance companies who offer discounts for home hardening measures and community-wide measures such as Firewise recognition. Check your homeowner's insurance policy to make sure you have adequate coverage to rebuild your home. Homes in our area have appreciated in value. If a catastrophic wildfire should occur and your home is damaged or destroyed, you don't want to find yourself in the position of being underinsured. Something you can do now that may help you in the future is to go through your house and open all closets and drawers. With your cell phone on video, walk through each room and narrate the inventory. Explain the quilt on the bed isn't just any old quilt, but a family heirloom, handmade by your great-great-grandmother and handed down from generation to generation. Explain the painting on the wall is an original, purchased by you X number of years ago for approximately X number of dollars. These details will help you give an accurate accounting of your belongings to your insurance company should you need to do so. While you're at it, walk around the outside of your house and take a video and narrate it too. Also, scan or take photos of important documents and store them on your computer, in the cloud, on a memory stick or flash drive to show your insurance company. Next slide, please. In this slide, you see a 2019 Firewise Recognition Certificate and the 2020 Renewal Certificate. Once your neighborhood has completed the required 6 steps and become Firewise recognized, your Firewise leader will be sent a certificate similar to these. Should you need proof of Firewise recognition when negotiating with an insurance company, ask your Firewise leader for a copy of the certificate. When you renew your insurance, be sure to let your company know you live in a Firewise neighborhood, the steps you have taken, and the costs to reduce the risk of your home in the destruction of your home in the event of a wildfire. According to California State Insurance Commissioner Lara, quote, "The science is clear. Wildfire hardened homes and neighborhoods better resist damage and are easier for firefighters to defend, protecting lives, homes, and our first responders," unquote. Next slide, please. The Moraga Orinda Fire Department has instituted a pilot program called the Fire Adapted Community Ambassador Program, where volunteer citizens trained by the fire department go out into neighborhoods and talk to homeowners about specific actions they can take on their property to reduce the risk of wildfire. Currently, there are 23 trained volunteers fanning out into the community. On a side note, one of the ambassadors in these pictures is Bob Sing Sang, Joan's husband. Bob is also a Lamorinda CERT trained volunteer. And as of today, when I checked, he checked in, he has visited 4 different homes in 2 different neighborhoods. Fire officials say they plan to have these volunteers out doing this work through the bulk of the fire season. If you live in the district, call Fire Marshal Jeff Isaacs to schedule an appointment for a visit for members of the team. Fire leaders, ambassadors, fire chief, fire marshal, and residents of a neighborhood coming together to learn about fire prevention and the Firewise program is an example of a fire-adapted community. We like to call it the A-team. So in conclusion, this is a lot of information and you're probably asking yourself, where do I start? Firewise USA recommends when planning your wildfire reduction projects, start with the house itself as the point where your efforts begin. Then move into the immediate zone. Once both have been completed, move into the intermediate and extended zones. Thank you. And now I will turn our presentation back to Melanie Light for some closing remarks. Melanie?
Thank you, Sue. That was really great. So that wraps up our program. Pretty much you can see all of our contributors here on this slide. So anyway, it was great. I really learned every time I listen to this, I learn a little something extra. We hope you feel energized to go out there and start your Firewise group and start working on your own home. And we are here to help you along the way. It's okay if you're from Lafayette, give us a ring. If you drop us a line via email at our site, orindafirewisecouncil.org, and we'll be happy to help you if you're from whatever town. Because just as we drive across city lines all the time, a fire can do the same, and we are in it all together. We have the tools to do it, and together we can solve this problem. We can make ourselves wildfire resilient. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, the Orinda Firewise Council. And Joan, if you'll go ahead and, there we go, give everybody a shot of everybody. I did want to hear from one more person. If Steve Hoyt, there you are, Steve. Steve has an amazing experience starting his Firewise group in Moraga. So I'd love for Steve to tell us a little bit about how it went and how it's going and some of the things he's done to work with that group. So Steve, if you're on, I'd love to hear from you. You're muted, so. Are you not able to get off mute? Let's see. Where's your phone? You're one of the phone numbers that you need your phone?
You're unmuted now, Steve.
Yeah, so your sound isn't working on your computer. You are going to use that on your phone. So we need to unmute your phone. Steve really does have a great story. I'm sorry you all can't hear it.
I know Steve's cell phone number. If you're looking for his number, do you need that since he can't talk to us?
What is the last 4 digits?
7514.
Let's see if I can unmute him, help him out. Come on, Steve. Let's see. I can only ask him to unmute.
Okay, how's that?
There you go.
All right, we knew it was possible. Yeah, I have a quirk in my laptop that doesn't seem to like Zoom audio. So as Julie indicated, my name is Steve Hoyt. I live in Campo Lindo, and we have a Firewise zone of 402 homes. We started roughly 2 years ago. We have 30 block captains, and each of the block captains represents 10 to 15 homes and is responsible for the communications and message driving to their particular group of homes. So how did we get started? Because we ended up at 402 homes. We certainly didn't start there. So I also am a CERT graduate, and I realized I did not have my act together on emergency preparedness. And if I didn't, the vast majority of others in the neighborhood wouldn't either. So I reached out to a group of friends that were talking 3 to 5, and we talked about the issues and exposures that we had. And we agreed to start a process of adopting 10 or 15 homes each and working with them in our immediate neighborhood to help them prepare go bags and those types of basic starting points for emergencies, and decided to prioritize fires because it's a lot easier to get people's attention on preparing for a fire than it is an earthquake, because fires are in the news every day. And so in terms of getting people's attention, we elected to start with the fire issues. And so then we became a Firewise community. And Joan and Sue and all did a great job of describing the Firewise process. It's actually quite simple. It doesn't take a lot of hours to do. But where I find it to be particularly helpful is really in the branding and marketing of taking actions to prevent fires and make your homes defendable. The reporting requirements of 1 hour per home are quite nominal. We usually finish our requirements for the year sometime in March, and then I simply stop tracking. But what it is helpful to us for is, hey, we're a Firewise zone. You need to pay attention. This is important stuff. And so we use it as a marketing tool, probably more than anything else. The areas of focus that we have done within Camp Olinda are education and awareness. So we have invited the MOFD, Gordon and Jeff Isaacs and company to attend our homeowners meeting once a year. And that seems to have quadrupled the typical HOA participation. It's not a very interesting meeting except for when MOFD is there. Each of the last 2 years, we have had over 100 homes participate in the Chipper Days. So we've had great take up on that, and people have been very eager. And in fact, we just got another question today: are we going to have a Chipper Day in the fall? Great attention and great participation in Chipper Days. In fact, we had one new block captain join us, and I was wondering why every house had a pile out in front of their yards, and I didn't know about it. It was one of our gaps in coverage. So very popular service. And I think, as Joan referenced, we did strike a deal with a couple of tree services to get a discount on juniper removal and dead pine removal. You always need to be a little careful with that because they can just jack the prices up 20% in order to get the 20% discount. So we always encourage competitive bids. But over the last 2 years, we would estimate roughly 100 pine trees have been removed from the neighborhood. So we've had fairly good take up. We also had a whole bunch of, what were those trees? Eucalyptus also removed. One of the other things that we have had success with, but we don't view as a scalable model, is some volunteer projects. We've had some elderly residents who were either financially incapable of doing mitigation activities or simply too lazy to do it. And so we reached out to the block captains, and we'd get 6 or 8 volunteers to come and remove the brush near the houses. And one time we were able to put it out for the Chipper Days. The other time we actually got 20 volunteer garbage cans who would donate their garbage can for that week, and we were able to chop it up and just drive it by and dump it in the green cans. Between the MOFD team and the 4 ambassadors that we have in Camp Olinda, we've done something on the order of 60 to 65 home assessments. Much of that was done prior to the ambassador program, but we do have 4 ambassadors now, and so we've done roughly 20 more assessments with the ambassadors. So that program is going well. We still are rooting for more take up on that. I do need to give a call out to MOFD. They've been spectacular to work with, just great partners in the whole process. So that's kind of where we are with Camp Olinda. We started small and it just slowly grew, and we just keep pushing on it. You can't get too upset when someone doesn't want to play. We certainly don't have any block captains who have 100% participation of people in their zones who are active and engaged and involved. We all have some reluctant people, but we are making progress with the vast majority of homes. One of the assessments that we did 2 weeks later, we saw 3 Italian cypress right by the house get taken out. So we were very pleased with that. So it's a process. Consistent improvement is probably our theme, because otherwise we could get frustrated, but we are making progress. Any questions?
Oh, that's awesome, Steve. Thanks for sharing your experience and letting us know that it's not a difficult experience. It's just a progress. It's a journey, and anything you do is going to improve the area and improve that for our whole community. And I love the fact that you were able to get discounts, as a group, as a neighborhood. I think that would be key to a lot of neighbors actually conforming or signing up for a community program. So I think that's wonderful.
And to be fair, the best discounts that were arrived at is when they're cutting your neighbor's tree down and you have a vulnerability nearby. When they're in the neighborhood up in the tree, that's when to strike out to them and say, hey, come over and knock this tree out for me too, because that's when you get the most attractive pricing.
That's great. I know we have one question that I didn't have an answer for. Paula had asked if there were any recommendations to find experts in the field for the vents, for the attic vents or the basement vents. Did you guys mention, was there something on CAL FIRE that recommended a list? Did anybody have that? Sue, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, I'll let someone talk to the vent manufacturer question, because I didn't go down that path. I didn't want them to break into the stucco so much. So I found a Home Depot 6-inch, 1/8 inch mesh that I did myself for 90% of the house, and I just cut it and inserted it right in. And so I took the 1/4 inch mesh and made it an 1/8 inch mesh, and it was $25 a roll. I did hire someone to do my second floor because I'm not going 18 feet up on a ladder, but I could do all of the vents on the first floor and did it myself for literally $50. It's probably not as good as the manufactured vents, but it is certainly easily done and inexpensive. So I'll let someone else speak to the brands.
So Julie, on CAL FIRE's website, there are a list of approved ember resistant vents. And I would recommend people go to that website first, look at the list, and then each of those manufacturers has their own website. So then you can go to that website and look. I think Vulcan vents are made in Minnesota. BrandGuard are made in Southern California, or I should say the company is located, the headquarters is in Southern California. I believe Vulcan Vents is located in Minnesota. And then there are other vent manufacturers, so you don't have to go with one versus the other. But Firewise recommends what Steve was saying, is that you can do this yourself. You can get, you got to make sure that the mesh screen that you get is metal and it's not plastic. But you can do it yourself, like he said he did around his foundation, and then hired someone to do the eaves. But it's well worth looking at, just because it's something that fire experts, professionals are advocating. Certainly our fire marshal and our fire chief at MoFed are advocating it. And if you look at Fire Safe Marin at their webinars, you'll see that they are advocating it too. And then of course the evidence from the Montecito Fire Protection District, they've determined that hardened homes are more than 3 times likely to withstand a destructive wildfire as opposed to homes that aren't hardened.
Yeah, thank
I'd
you.
like to jump in here. There are significant differences between the Vulcan and the BrandGuard vents. The Vulcan vent is made with an intumescent coating. An intumescent coating is one that when it reaches 300 degrees, the coating itself expands and chars, and that's what seals off the vent so that no embers can enter. The BrandGuard vent is a baffle vent. It doesn't seal off, but because it has a series of baffles in the vent itself, it's a little thicker, and the vent or the ember can't get in. Now, with any change in the vents from 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch is considered no restriction to airflow. There's a formula for figuring the number of square feet of vent opening that's required for the square feet of the vented area. So you have to figure the area underneath your house. It gets a little complex, but you figure the crawl space in square feet and then apply a factor to figure out how many vents you need around the foundation. So as soon as you start putting in 1/8" material or any of the other materials, any of the other guards, you have to then add additional vents to come up with the proper number of square feet for the vented space. So while you can do it yourself, I highly recommend that you get a professional in there to calculate it properly so that you get enough airflow so you don't get mold. The whole idea of the vent is to get fresh air under your house to keep it dry so that you don't get mold, mildew. And if you cut down on the amount of airflow, you'll cut down on the amount of mold resistance. So I highly recommend that you get a professional in there to do the calculations.
And Duncan, I think you've worked with BrandGuard before, and BrandGuard has a list of people that they go with. Is that correct?
Yes, Lamorinda CERT Foundation is working with BrandGuard, and we're working on a deal, an arrangement where you can work through the CERT Foundation, and BrandGuard will send out a contractor and do all the measuring and so forth. We haven't reached out to other vent companies, but we have established a relationship with BrandGuard, simply because that's the one that Chief Winokur told me I should go to. Some other comments. Moraga Orinda Fire started with the Firewise program several years ago when Chief Randy Bradley was there from 2009 to 2013. He introduced Firewise to MOFD. He was on the original team at NPFA that developed Firewise. So MOFD has a long history of being Firewise. The program was rather dormant until Chief Winokur resurrected it and got it going. Lafayette, on the other hand, being part of ConFire, they're just now getting going with Firewise, just in the past year. So the Lafayette Emergency Preparedness Commission is working with ConFire, and we have 4 neighborhoods that are currently in the process of getting Firewise recognition. We have more that are going to become Firewise, but if anyone of you is in Lafayette, definitely contact me, send me an email, and I will get your information and get you into a Firewise group. And then once we do that at the city level, then we'll pass it on to ConFire and say, here is a group ready to be looked at. That's all I have. Oh, this video will be available if anyone wants to review it. It will be available on the LamorindaCert.org website under monthly meetings, and I'll have it up by about Wednesday morning.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I do, yes.
Stephen?
Steve Wallachy. Just 2 things, a quick comment and then a question. And the comment is that, Steve Hoyt has done a great job in Camp Olinda, organizing and partially through his networking throughout Camp Olinda. It's amazing to see all of the foliage that's been removed, yet there's so much left yet to remove. It's something to behold. The question I had is, I think like many homes, my roof has roof vents along the ridge line. And has anyone got any experience with protecting those against embers?
Absolutely. Brand Guard has roof vents for the crest, for the apex.
Yeah, but is that for retrofitting or is that for when
Yes.
you put?
It's for either. It can be retrofitted.
They can be retrofitted.
Yes.
Because I suspect most people don't even think about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody, Leslie? You're on mute. You'll have to take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me? Can you
Now,
hear me?
okay.
Yeah, two quick questions. I've recently been told by two different insurance companies that we live in a bound zip code, and they will not insure us. And I'm wondering, is that like an experience? I was told that also becoming Firewise helps with your insurance. So that's one question. The second question is, I live in Lafayette and would love to know how Lafayette could get a chipper program going. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, let me answer that. Lafayette has a chipper program, sort of. We're working with Confire. Confire did an arrangement with CAL FIRE to use a CAL FIRE chipper, and it was only for those neighborhoods that are currently in the process of becoming Firewise. So this will happen again. I'll be talking about it this Wednesday night at the Lafayette Emergency Preparedness Commission meeting. I don't know if anything will come of it. I doubt it, but at least we're getting the conversation going. So we're looking at doing a chipper program in Lafayette, but it will start out with Firewise candidate neighborhoods.
Hey, Duncan, can you hear me? This is Gordon.
Yes.
I couldn't get my hand up. This little thing on the screen wasn't coming up. In response to the last question about insurance, oddly enough, we just got a letter from Safeco, and I'm doing some checking on that with their underwriting department and claims. But we have a homeowners with them. We've been with them for 50 some years. And they've now come out, effective July 26th, policies are now covered at no cost for and are enrolled into our quote, wildfire response benefits. So if anybody is insured with Safeco and they get a letter, don't throw it away because it has your policy number on it and it has some interesting information. Now I've got to call in for them to find out what the logistics are and how it would affect this particular area. And they're using a national vendor out of Oklahoma City. So at any rate, anybody that has Safeco, and by the way, I checked with our broker or an agent, and I was concerned, just as others are, what's the chances of Safeco canceling or non-renewing policies in this area? Now, we live in Moraga. I do not know where the lady lives that, I think maybe she said Lafayette. So maybe there are still areas in Lafayette where Safeco is writing policies because here we haven't been affected by that. But anyway, it's interesting. And I'll give you a report as soon as I get more information. I'll share it with Gordon at the Fire Marshal's office.
Thank you, Gordon. I think Sue had a response. You're still muted.
There we go. So a couple of suggestions. And the first is I would advise that you go to the Fire Safe Marin website and you look at the July 27th, 2021 webinar. It was strictly on insurance and it was excellent. One of the speakers was Amy Bach, who is the founder of United Policyholders. That's a nonprofit organization that was established shortly after the Oakland Hills fire just for this very reason, to help homeowners who lost their homes in the fire negotiate with their insurance company. So I would definitely watch the webinar. I would contact United Policyholders. Their website is uphelp.org. And I actually have a friend who lives in Moraga who had Safeco insurance for 30 years and lost it. I recommended that she go to United Policyholders and ask for help, and they were able to help her, and she did find other insurance. One thing that you want is your last resort is the California Fair Plan. And that's because it's not all, first of all, it's very expensive. And second of all, it's not inclusive. It just covers fire. So you'll have to go and find another company that will cover liability, theft, earthquake, if you choose. And then, but you can, as Amy Bach said, you can, if you have 75 days from the day you are issued the non-renewal, you get your non-renewal notice. You have 75 days to find insurance. That's the law, replacement insurance. Another company to look at, and it was briefly mentioned in this webinar on Fire Safe Marin, and I haven't had a chance to really do the research on it, but there's a company on the peninsula, an insurance company. I think it's called Delos, D-E-L-O-S. And supposedly they are using a different fire. They've developed their own risk model, and it takes into effect mitigation that a homeowner might have done on their property, satellite imagery, and artificial intelligence to come up with their own fire model. And they are insuring a lot of California homeowners based on their model who have lost their insurance. So that's another place to look to. Good luck.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, that's huge. Does anybody else have any questions for us?
I do. I'm hoping you can hear me. Hillary Osofsky. Are you able to hear me?
I hear you, Hillary. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Okay.
Or I did hear you.
My son in Lafayette, and we both had Safeco insurance. He was canceled months ago, or got a notice of non-renewal. We got our notice of non-renewal some short while ago as well. We found replacement insurance through our broker, Ken Kosich in Lafayette. And so we transferred to Encompass Insurance. And what I'm told is that these various insurance companies will limit their risk by putting a lid on how many homes they will insure in a particular geographic area. And so if you're able to find a replacement insurer, given that the spaces are limited, you really want to jump on it to make sure that you're not left out just because they've reached their limit in the number of policies they'll issue. I have a separate question on the subject of fire, but not this particular topic, if I might ask it. We all know that we need an escape route in the event of an approaching fire. We don't know whether from which direction the fire will be coming from, but we do know that the tunnel will create a bottleneck for all of us, and that unfortunately there's no route, no land route to the tunnel other than, or to the Fish Ranch Road, other than by going on 24 westbound. So I'm wondering if anybody has explored or given advice on finding alternate escape routes. We thought about going through Richmond, but of course Richmond I've probably got greater exposure to brush, depending upon where the fire is coming from. If you don't want to take 24, there are canyons. I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's one across from Wildcat Canyon. And again, that you've got greater exposure to brush. Has there been any expert input on safer alternative routes to take in the event of we need to find an evacuation route?
Yes, Hillary, this is Duncan. We've spent a lot of time dealing with that at the Lafayette Emergency Preparedness Commission when we did our original evacuation zones in 2016. We spent a lot of time on evacuation routes and decided that we would not publish any evacuation routes because unlike a hurricane where you know how you're going to evacuate, from a wildfire you don't, and it's all condition dependent. So that will be decided by fire and law at the time of the evacuation, and the CWS notice will give you evacuation routes when the fire is happening. And they can change because of smoke, because of wind direction and fire movement. So don't pre-plan an evacuation route. Know which ways you might get out of an area other than by road if there are over hill areas that you could drive on, for instance. But don't lock in that this is the way you're going to go because it may not be accessible. And the fire department may decide that they have to close a road that's perfectly usable because that's how they'll bring their equipment in. So they'll want all the residents to take another route out. But they will tell you that in the CWS evacuation notice.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, I don't see any more questions, Duncan. I think you can wrap it up.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending. We hope to see you next month on the second Monday of the month. Julie, do you remember what the program is?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I'm one day at a time here.
I don't have it in front of me, but it will be in the newsletter that comes out about a week and a half before the meeting. So just put the date, always on the second Monday of the month at 7 o'clock, except in December, we take a break. Other than that, the recording will be up on Wednesday morning. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Orinda Firewise Council.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.